Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the YouTube channel grecochess, where we discuss, analyze, we comment, and we talk about the game of chess. I'm your host. My name is Harry Lasaniziris, and in this video, we continue discussing the games that were part of the online tournament grecochess that takes place in chess.com. 16 players started the tournament, and after the qualifying round, 4 made it to the final. The following: maximgovorukha from the Ukraine, Barak 7 from Israel, Maisky from Italy, and myself, your host, Harry Lasaniziris, username theharry from Greece. Out of the 12 games of the final phase, 10 have been completed. We have presented 7 of them. 2 we are skipping because they ended in resignation in move number 1, and now it is time for the other game to present. And 2 games are still going on. But for this video, the game we're going to show to you. Let me share first the screen with you. Here we are. I'm playing with the white pieces, the Harry, versus Maxim Govorukha with the black pieces. As always, when I'm copying games from chess.com, I'm only showing part of the screen because we don't want to spoil the surprise. We don't want to tell in advance what happened, which is going to show in the rest of the screen. In the part that you see, there is a stripe on the left, black and white. If you see a number at the bottom left, it means white is doing better. At the top left, it means that black is doing better. And after every move, first of all, the computer will show which move would have been the best with the green arrow. And also it is going to comment on the move. In the first few moves, usually you'll see a little booklet, means it's a book move theory. Then each move can be anything from brilliant to exclamation marks to great to an exclamation mark to best star. Excellent, it is thumbs up. Good move, it is an arrow. And then we have inaccuracy, question mark with exclamation point. Mistake, 1 question mark, and blunder, 2 exclamation marks. And let's start the game. And with the white pieces, I'm starting pawn to e4, standard beginning. And Maxim Govorukha replies with the French defense, pawn to e6. And start a second move, pawn to d4, pawn to d5. Next move. For next third move of the French, you can place your knight on c3, d2. You can push your pawn to e5, or you can take on d5, but I chose another option, bishop to d3. The coach, the online coach, artificial generator, says, good job stepping in to defend your pawn. Pawn to c5. They're striking at the center to fight for space, says the coach. How will I reply? I take the pawn on d5, and Maxim Govorukha takes back. And here we are completing the book, meaning the opening theory, because the next move have various options. I was afraid that the pawn would go to c4, attack my bishop, and I would have to move the bishop a second time again. So I'm checking with b5. Good move, says the computer. So yes, I'm moving the bishop a second time, but also forcing Maxim Govorukha to move a second time, and he defends with knight to c6. My knight goes to 3, and before the knight goes to 3, we completed the first 5 moves, and what is the score? 0.0. We are still even. My knight goes to f3 for the next move. Queen to a5 with a check. Maxim Govorukha, of course, Maxim Govorukha is looking at a fork because black is attacking simultaneously bishop at b5 and the king at e1. But there is only one move that both replies to check and defends the bishop. And it is a move I'm going to play, knight to c3, and computer says it's great. I don't think it deserves great because it's quite well known. Knight f6 for Maxim Govorukha continues developing. And I decide to take the black knight. Why? Because I was afraid what if pawn goes to d4 and pawn from c5 goes to d4 and then my knight is lost. Plus the bishop without the knight's protection would be also in danger, so that's what I'm taking. But the computer doesn't like it, would rather have my knight go to e5. If this happened, let's see. The pawn takes here, but the knight takes on c6. Yes, I would have a dangerous attack, but also very risky, very sharp. Pawn takes back on c6 for maximgovorukha. My pawn takes on c5. In mistakes as a computer, again, I'm afraid of pawn taking on d4. Computer would rather have me king 2 king 6 castling. Of course, bishop takes back. Kingside castling for both of us. We completed 10 moves, and as you see here, Maxim Govorukha is ahead by 0.4. Continue the game. Bishop to g5. Threatens the knight on f6, and if I take it and pawn takes back from g7, then I have a big advantage because the g file is open towards the black king. But Machingovorukha is not going to play like that. We'll send the knight to e4. And what should I do now? Nothing is directly threatened, but my bishop on g5 depends on the knight on f3. Meaning if my knight on f3 moves, then the bishop is lost. Also, my on c3, if Maxim Govorukha takes it and takes back the pawn, then I lose the pawn on c3. That is why I take the knight, the best move. Maxim Govorukha takes back, and now my knight on f3 is in danger. I can move it, but I decided to do something else. Danger level. Threaten something more important than my knight. So I send my bishop to d2. Yes, it is. It saves my knight, at least for now, but computer would rather have my knight go to d2, not my bishop. Queen goes to b6. Inaccuracy. They're threatening my pawn on b2. Computer would rather have it go to b5. Still threatening the pawn on b2. My knight goes to g5. Bishop goes to a6. Misses the computer. It says that if bishop went to a5, they would have a strong attack, so they missed it. My queen goes to h5. Great. I'm threatening with mate. Yes, Maxim Govorukha threatens my rook on f1, but if they want to take it, wonderful. I'm mating on h7. Maxim Govorukha replies with pawn to h6. And here we completed the first 15 moves, and Maxim Govorukha is ahead by 0.9. The margin increases, not by too much, but still it's a game going on. I'm taking the pawn. Best moves the computer. Maxim Govorukha takes my rook. And I take back the rook, but computer would rather have my knight go to f6 the check, because then if the g pawn took back, then bishop goes to h6, and it's a very, very dangerous attack. Instead, Maxim Govorukha now will place the pawn on f5, or try to push along the f file. My knight goes to c5, I win the bishop. Queen takes back. Bishop goes to c3. I'm threatening towards g7, but the computer would rather have my bishop go to h6, because I think then if it's taken back, I have a perpetual check. Queen g6 and h6 perpetual. Queen to d5 for Maxim Govorukha. Queen to g6 for me, I'm near the mate. Rook to f7 for Maxim Govorukha, defends the mate. We completed the first 20 moves. Maxim Govorukha is ahead by 0.8, a small margin. Game is still going on. My pawn to h3, Maxim Govorukha blunders with rook to e8. I have my chance, which I didn't see, unfortunately. If I took the pawn on g7, Maxim Govorukha took it back, otherwise threatening a discover check, then I win the rook on e8. That's why for one moment I was ahead by 2.5, as you see. But I didn't see it, miss, and they said pawn to a3. From up plus 2.5, I'm down to 2.1. King Govorukha, rook to e6, queen to g3, king to h7, my king to h2, rook to g6 attacks my queen on g3. My queen goes to f3, best moves the computer, and now we exchange. We completed 25 moves. My king Govorukha now is ahead by 2.3. I missed my one and only chance. Pawn takes on f3, rook on e7. My pawn to f4, I push it. to get my space. Rook 2, e2, and now my pawn on c2 is threatened. And the only way to save it is by placing my rook on c1, but then I lose my pawn on f2, and this is dangerous because this is near my king. Instead, bishop goes to d4, at least protect once again the f2 pawn. Rook takes on c2. My rook goes to e1 to have some space. Pawn goes to c5, and now my bishop cannot protect both c2 and f2. I have to choose, and I choose the one that is nearest my king. My bishop goes to e3. The rook goes to e6. Completed 30 moves, and Maxim Govorukha is ahead by 3.9. My king goes to g3. Any reaction. Rook takes b2. My rook attacks the c5 pawn, and Maxim Govorukha places the rook on b5. I take it hoping that I would win a pawn, because if rook takes back, then my bishop takes the rook. But Maxim Govorukha had a better idea. Rook takes on e3. Zwick is called in between move. I take it back and I lose my rook. And now things are very bad for me because I'm down a whole rook. My pawn goes to e4. Let's see what can do with the rook. Rook goes to a5, Maxim Govorukha, threatening my pawn on a4. There's no way I can save it. And at this point, I'm down by 5.7. Game is basically over, and I continue a few moves out of inertia. Pawn to h4, rook takes a4, pawn to h5, rook goes to e4, my king to f3, and pawn to a5. And now Maxim Govorukha's plan was just to push the pawn and promote. And you see here the white flag in the red circle. At that point, unfortunately, resigned. So I end the final round with 1 draw and 5 losses. Didn't do well at all. But let's first of all see the review of the game. Share the other screen. Let's share the screen. And here we are. You see that I played with accuracy 76.5, Maxim Govorukha 85.9. We played around ratings 1300 for me, 1800 for Maxim Govorukha. No brilliant moves, great moves, 3 versus 2 for me, book moves for each. Best 18 versus 9 for Maxim Govorukha, excellent 8 versus 6 for me, good 6 versus 1 for me, inaccuracies 2 for me, 3 Maxim Govorukha, mistakes 5 for me, 1 for Maxim Govorukha, misses 2 for Maxim Govorukha, and 1 for me, and 1 blunder for Maxim Govorukha, the one that unfortunately I was not able to take advantage. I missed it. This ends this game, but let's see how things are going, because we've shown all the games that have been completed in the tournament. At this point, you see that Maxim Govorukha and Barak Sever have 4 points, 4 wins each of them. They have defeated twice, both my skin and myself, so everything will depend on the 2 games between them. And third place, my skin for 1.5 points. Fourth place, last place for me for half point. We're going to see the next 2 games between Maxim Govorukha and Barak Sever, how they go, and any of them complete. So I'm going to show it. In the meantime, most likely we'll return with facing the chess.com bots. But that's it for now, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for watching. Thanks to the viewers, the subscribers, the likes, and the comments. I'm Harry Lasaniziris. This is the Greco Chess YouTube channel. Goodbye.